Is Friday, November 3rd, 2023. 2 months left in the year. And what are we going to do? We're going to make the most of them. Today, we have a really good question that I'm going to answer from Wyatt Wallace here. But before I do, a few quick announcements. First of all, in case you missed it, I do have a Halloween special that is out right now. It came out on Halloween, but it's good for this month. And it's in the pinned post. And it basically walks you through my entire coaching process, protocol, strategy. I never hold anything back. You know exactly how things work. And if even that is not clear enough, you can reach out and I will happily explain it. But the big post or the big offer here is you can get a free month of coaching with my 6-month program, which is not something that I do very often. So that's an extra month, totally free if you sign up this month. And I have, it was 4 slots. Now it's 3 slots left. And I can only handle a few clients at a time because I do make this a very personalized thing. This is not a cookie cutter, not a template. You have a lot of access to me and a lot of guidance along the way to hit your goals. So that's what it's about. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and unpin, we'll unpin last week's Ask Philip, because it's going to be replaced by this video. And I think that honestly, that's all I wanted to say today. So why don't we just jump into the Ask Philip thread for today. So for those, again, who are just joining me or watching this for the first time, or you're newer in the group, or you may have, not been as engaged until now, this is a way for you to ask a question and I will answer it live in as much detail as needed to help you get unstuck, which means if you provide me detail on your situation, right? What does your training, nutrition, everything look like? I can help you specifically, not just a generic question that I might answer on a podcast, but literally your specific numbers. And the more numbers and details you give me, the more I can come up with something very specific here for an answer. So today we have one question from Wyatt Wallace, and Wyatt has been a very engaged member of the community. He's a lifter, making a lot of progress, building muscle, doing all the right things. And I love his question today. He said, I started my bulking at 181 in June. So he was 181 pounds scale weight. His trend weight now in macro factor is 194. So he's put on a solid 13 pounds in July, August, September, October, in about 4 months. So that comes out to be about 3 pounds a month, which is for his size, approaching 200, is right in the sweet spot of where we talk about. That's like the 0.2, 0.3, maybe a little bit higher percent body weight per week. So nice job, Wallace, on gaining the weight effectively and at the right rate to avoid gaining too much fat, but to gain enough to be able to push that strength and muscle. And I could see it in your lifts too when you post those. I'm planning to bulk until March at a ½ pound a week. So again, that's a little over 2 pounds a month. But if I hit, if I hit a half to 0.8 average per week, I may end up somewhere between 202 to 209. So a little bit higher and I think because he's overshooting a little bit, which is something I always encourage, setting your rate to the minimum target that you would want, and then always overshooting it just a bit. Kind of the opposite in fat loss, where we would set a target and we kind of undershoot it a bit, just to make sure we're actually getting the progress we want. The strategy feels like it's working pretty well. I'm gaining muscle and I have a better body composition, more muscle mass now than I did at this same weight a year ago. Perfect. So it's working as we would expect. I really like your recommendations for getting in and out during a cut, doing 2 to 3 months max. And that's 8 to 12 weeks. If you are doing this for the first time, it might take longer if you have excess fat to lose, but 8 to 12 weeks is more reasonable for someone who's done it before. 8 weeks is more like a mini cut. 12 is more of a standard cut. However, my question is, what happens if you fail to reach your goal and you wouldn't be ready to bulk again? I heard you say in your podcast, you recommend no more than 1% body weight per week. That's fat loss, no more than 1% of your fat loss per week. For sure. That is correct. Let's say I end at 205. I cut for 12 weeks, shoot for 2 pounds a week. So that's 24 pounds he's aiming for to get down to about 180? Yeah, about 180. But I end up at like 1.2 pounds a week. So only 15 pounds. So he's saying he wants to lose about 25, but what if he only loses 15? My weight after 12 weeks would be 190. Understanding my body composition as it is today and the level of body fat, I don't think I would be comfortable gaining for another 9 months. And I could see wanting another 10 to 15 lower than that. How would you address the bulk cut strategy if 12 weeks of cutting doesn't get you lean enough? Okay, there's a lot in here, Wyatt. Let me address different pieces of this. The first piece is your question. What happens if you fail to reach your goal and you wouldn't be ready to bulk again? So if you're constraining your goal to a time frame, obviously if you don't hit the rate of loss, you're not going to reach the goal. You then have a decision to make. Do I just keep going till I hit the goal? Because you will. It's just a matter of time. Or do you stop? And what you're saying is if you don't have the 24 pounds, you'll feel still fluffier than you want to be before you start a bulk, right? And I get it, right? It's like how far down you go so that you've gotten where you want to be, and now you can bulk for a consistent amount of time. But the premise of your question is that you fail to reach your goal. And I don't know if anybody watching this notices that. I'm big into mindset and psychology and the idea that I want to be using the right tool and approach to get the job done. And when I work with clients, like if you work with me, Wyatt, for that cut, we will reach your goal, period. Like if you follow the plan, that's the key. If you follow the plan I set for you, you will reach your goal. So this idea of like what happens if you fail to reach your goal implies that you're already thinking of failure and setting yourself up for not excuses. I'm not going to put it that way at all. You're a super hardworking guy, but more like the fear that all these things are going to get in the way. Plateaus are going to happen, interruptions, maybe diet breaks, whatever. And it's going to slow you down. So like if you're coming from the mindset of life will get in the way and I'm going to choose at some point to possibly slow it down or take breaks, and therefore it might not go as quickly as I want, that's one thing. In which case you have to accept that that's the case, plan for it, and tell yourself you're either going to go longer on the cut or you're going to start your bulk from a higher level, and maybe don't bulk as long, maybe bulk for 6 months and not 9 months. If, however, you're thinking that even with the macro factor settings, even with the intended deficit, your body somehow doesn't respond, well, now we're talking about all of the things that can cause a weight loss or fat loss plateau. Now, I'm going to share with you and everyone else watching, in case you guys missed it, I did a nice training called How to Break Through a Fat Loss Plateau and Why They Happen. And in this training, it wasn't just the typical, like you'll see that you can Google this, right? How to get through a plateau. And it's like all the typical stuff. I like to take an energy flux perspective, an energy stack perspective, all of the things that give you a high level of metabolism so that you can ramp up the energy outside of the equation and not have to cut so much in the energy in. When you're using something like macro factor, if you go a week or two and your rate of loss is much less than you expected, it is going to cut your calories further anyway to make up for it. And of course, we don't want our expenditure to be dropping. So this is why we walk more, for example. This is why we regulate our cardio in the right way. This is why we get enough sleep. This is why we ideally cut out alcohol altogether during fat loss, or at least limit it quite a bit. This is why we focus on high satiety foods and, being consistent with our food and all of these other things. So I talk about that in that training, the things that cause a plateau. And therefore, if you can dial them in and make sure they're solid when you go into fat loss, you will be successful. And again, if you're working with me, if I'm coaching you, I will help you through all of those things and make sure you have the practices and behaviors in place to do that. My point is, don't assume failure. Don't assume failure from the beginning, Wyatt, because if you're using macro factor, which is an excellent tool for the job, it is going to give you the calories you need to continue to hit that deficit. So that's the first thing. All right. The next thing is, let's see. How would you address the bulk cut strategy? 12 weeks of cutting doesn't get you lean enough. Yeah. And so let's say, for whatever reason, your body is fighting back and not responding, which I'm not sure is going to happen with you, man. Like your body seems to respond well to the change in energy given the cut, but you never know. If it starts to slow down, you really have two options, cut your calories further during the cut, or Ramp up your expenditure somehow. And really the only way to ramp up your expenditure effectively without your body overcompensating for that is more steps. And so if you're getting like 8,000 steps a day, going to 12 or even 15 during fat loss will help a lot. And steps can come in the form of walking or light biking or some other light forms of cardio. And then once that's it. So that's about not making excuses. Now, if you still end up every week and it gets harder and harder for whatever reason, and you've gone through the whole checklist of looking at those plateau factors, and your body is just not responsive, which again, I think is unlikely. I see that sometimes with, for example, perimenopausal women, right? Because of hormones. I might see that in somebody who's just generally unresponsive in both directions. I think you're going to be responsive. But if you weren't, then it's time to assess the aggressiveness of the diet. Like in that case, you may not want to do the 1%. You may want to do like 0.5 or 0.75% and just extend the cut. At some point, Wyatt, in the future, I want you to get to the point where you're building for like 9-10 months and cutting for no more than 2, and don't necessarily have to go at 1% because you are staying within the range that you want and continuing to improve your body composition. So I think I covered it all for you. Like, let's not assume we're going to fail. Let's make sure that we get our energy stack as high as possible, get all the right habits in place to increase our expenditure, go after the 1% and make sure to stick to those calories, pretty consistently, and keep the protein high, and you should be good. So if that didn't answer your question, as always, comment on the video below. For those of you watching, comment live. If you're watching this live, comment or hashtag live, comment hashtag replay if you're watching the replay, and please take advantage of the service in the future to ask me questions like this, and I will give you an answer. All right, man. Thank you again, Wyatt. Thank you everyone for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. Happy November, and we'll talk soon.